Maiden day for the Hangar 9 Fokker D7 turned out to be hot with light winds but some gusty crosswinds. And none of that was reason not to maiden this plane. On the way out to make the takeoff run, I did find out that the D7 does turn pretty well even though it doesn't have a steerable tail wheel. It turns slower, but it does turn. All that's left is to gas it, get it in the air, and see what happens. I was sure I had everything set up real close, but we'll see. And here I find out that the elevator works real well on the takeoff run. It felt a little bit mushy until it picked up a little speed, but that only took a couple of seconds. Right here I put in 2 or 3 clicks of down elevator trim, and that's really all it took. I had wondered if the DA50 and the Vest 23B prop would be enough for this plane. That turned out to be not a problem. This engine and prop combination works well on a lot of planes. And this is the same maiden takeoff from a different angle. Even though the D7 is flying well, it's got a little skip to the motor. It's running a little rich, and I don't want to take a chance on a dead stick with a brand new airplane. Once I was sure that it was reasonably trimmed out, I wanted to start shooting some landing approaches and get this thing back on the ground so I could tweak the motor. When I started this turn, I was just going to shoot an approach to see how it sank and how it was getting lined up on the runway, but it did both so well that I just kept letting it sink. It's a little long and a little fast, but I wasn't going to try slowing it up. For the first landing, this isn't bad at all. The motor's a little shaky, but it's still running. Here I get to do a little more driving around on the runway, and it's not bad at all. For those of you not familiar, this plane doesn't have a steerable tailwheel. It's just got a skid back there, like the original plane did. The rudder's not huge, but it works well, and it's not hard driving around. This is the second takeoff with the motor leaned out well under 1/8 of a turn. But it's a DA50 and that's all it takes. It cleaned up nice. The D7 isn't a whole lot faster than it was in the first flight, but I am impressed with how fast it actually is. These are flat bottom wings, but they're not as thick as I expected and they seem to get through the air real well. More importantly is they make more lift than I expected at all speeds. Get a DA carb set right and they get ridiculously easy to start. You'll notice that the pilot figure that comes with this plane isn't in the cockpit. I explain it in more detail in the build part of this review, but he was just stupid heavy. The D7's got a short nose moment, so it's going to need nose weight to start with, and I'm not putting a heavy pilot that far back from the CG. And besides, I'm not anticipating showing up at any scale events. And again, this is a different view of that second takeoff with the motor leaned out a little bit. After flying it the rest of the day, I decided to leave the motor alone for at least a few more times at the field. It seems happy right now. Notice that the tail comes up right away, and the rudder's got plenty of authority to steer this on the takeoff run. I found that being a little gentle on takeoff is all this plane needs. Just give it a couple seconds and it's up to speed. I'm not sure why it is, but it seems like anytime you fly a warbird, you gotta make these low, fast passes, even when they're not all that fast. This is only the second flight on this plane, and I already feel like I've been flying it for a long time. It just keeps going where I point it. And if you're looking for a big-time roll rate, this isn't going to be the one you want. This D7 only has ailerons on the top wings, and it's just not designed to be a real fast rolling airplane. What strikes me as a little odd is how well the ailerons work no matter what you're doing with it, even at real slow speeds coming in for a landing. Something else that surprised me is how effective the rudder is, even though it looks pretty small. Let it run out of vertical, stuff the rudder in, give it a shot of gas, and it comes right around. After we check this thing over real good to make sure nothing's loosened up and that everything's still where we want it, we'll shake this thing out a little bit more and see just what it will do. So far it seems to like the rudder a bunch, and it doesn't do odd things when you push in a bunch of rudder. The wind had changed on us a little bit, so I had to land from the other direction, but it still felt fine and we made a decent landing. Once I got it on the ground, then we started finding out about that ground handling deal, and we almost tipped it over here. The D7's got quite a bit of side surface to it, and you'll see when it's coming back up here that it catches some wind from the other side of the runway, and despite me turning left, it turns right. When it goes around here, you can see the rudder's full left. Just when you think the plane's doing everything you tell it to, it thinks on its own. I was texting a friend while we were doing the maiden flights, and he asked if it was going to be a keeper, and I said absolutely. Stay tuned. As we get some time on this plane, we'll do another video later on to show you what I found out that it likes to do. That might take a little while though, because this plane's a lot of fun to fly.